38 concert tours worldwide, and 11 studio albums that span 4 decades, the Titans of Thrash remain the standard by which all other metal is measured. We begin with a 1984 classic from their second album, For Whom the Bell Tolls, followed by the 1992 tour anthem, Wherever I May Roam. And then, let's turn down the house and light up the stage for the Auburn University Marching Band and their show, Metallica.
Game 4 is completed. The Auburn Tigers fall to the Oklahoma Sooners in Norman, Oklahoma, the first time playing in the state of Oklahoma with this particular team. The final score is 17-24. We're going to talk about it, the score, the stats, and the storylines all throughout the show. Come on in. Let's break this one down and figure it out. War Eagle, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of E2C Network Live, where we get together, we sit down, and we talk about the Auburn experience. The Auburn experience to us is all about a few things: Auburn sports, Auburn culture, Auburn family stuff. An easier way to say it, though, is if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. So thank you so much for joining us in what we're going to be doing today on this particular live stream. This is a post-game reaction show, Game 4 of 2025 for Auburn football. They fall to the Oklahoma Sooners 17-24. We're going to walk through every single thing that we can of this. We're going to walk through the individual stats. We're going to walk through the team stats. And amongst that, we're going to talk about the storylines, talk about some of your commentary as well throughout this. That's what you've got coming up on this particular show this evening. Let me start off by first welcoming you. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate that. Make sure that you're not subscribing, following, wherever you are getting this content. We appreciate you doing that. Please do smash the like button if you're on the social media and all that kind of stuff that you can do to help the stream out. Let me also address, this is the first the only loss that we have had to break down at this point in the season, which has been off to a great start and was nearly even a better start in this one. I want to keep this as succinct as I can. Keep in mind, this is not a place for you to come act like you're on a message board. If you're here to just voice grievances the entire time, probably not going to be a great place for that. We're going to talk about things in context with a little bit less emotion than you see a lot of other places. So conduct yourself accordingly, and we'll deal with any Oklahoma fans that want to show their tails in here, which they probably wouldn't have been if they had gone the other way. So let me start off the show with this particular opening thoughts here. You all know that I am not one. If you've watched the show, any of the content that we've done, let me make sure that I say this right up at the front. I think it is one of the most pitiful things in the world to blame the game on the refs, because most of the time you will find yourself in a position, you put yourself in the position to be affected by the refs, or it's more you putting yourself in the position for them to affect the outcome of your game more than them just flat out affecting the outcome of that game. This is, though, the first game in quite some time where we can actually say the game was affected in some ways by the inattention to detail, the inability to see particular things happening, making questionable overchanges. It flat out was. This was the referees made a big difference in this game. That does not take away from the problems that Auburn had in this game. We're going to talk about a few of those. This does not take away from the Oklahoma Sooners. Both things can be true. The Oklahoma Sooners won this game. Congratulations to them. They're a really good team. Although with all of the over-posturing that happened this weekend, if that's your performance based on that over-posturing, I don't think those two things line up. But we'll talk about it. We'll break it down, all that kind of stuff. As I've already said, please do make sure that you are keeping yourselves in line with the Auburn creed here in your commentary. I don't think we're going to have too many problems with that this evening, but we'll jump into it. I see a lot of you talking about the referees already. Look, it's a tough way to go. I think the other big story tonight is the inability to protect the quarterback, the inability to create a sufficient enough running game. And this is not a game that looks great on the offensive line. Not one particular person. In fact, there was probably a bright spot or two we may get to when we start breaking that down a little bit more details. The entire game was not bad for the offensive line, but when it was bad, none worse than that last sequence right there. So that's what we're going to try to work through and talk through all some of those things right there, try to figure them out and try to figure out what happened tonight with this particular game. Now, Let's dive into this just a little bit here. We're going to walk through some stats. Want to hear what you guys. Let me just ask this. I know this isn't something that you always want to talk about in this game, and please don't be annoying and do the referees were the player of the game. Okay, I'm asking player of the game. We get it. Referees are the player of the game. Let's be a little bit different here. Who is Auburn's player of the game for you guys if you had to give it to someone? I think it's probably going to be somebody on that defensive front, because after everything that they had to deal with, they showed out. The other, while you're thinking about that, the other big storyline from this game, obviously the big notion of Jackson Arnold coming back. I think he showed out pretty well throughout this. Not perfect. He had a couple of shaky throws there at the start, which probably should have been interceptions. But there are a lot of opportunities there where he could have improved. But I think he played pretty decently. If he had some room to run around just a little bit more, maybe this is a little bit more successful here. Neil, don't be that way. Come on, man. We don't have to be toxic all the time. But you guys are saying Cam Coleman. Wasn't it nice? Wasn't it nice to see Cam Coleman? I mean, like, that was just awesome. You give it to the defense as a whole. I think there's a lot of people on the defense that deserve player of the game. Cam Coleman certainly showed out in a big way today. Taking a really quick look at his stats. 3 catches for 88 yards. So maybe it felt like he had a little bit more in there. Of course, he had some more opportunities that were missed, either by just slightly overthrows or a lack of pass interference called on the defender that he was on. Let's see here. Yeah, Kyle says Auburn's going to be fine. Just get the O-line cleaned up. Yeah, what I don't want to have happen here is an overreaction of the offensive line. One of the things that I have been very, to be honest, very, very consistent in my critique of and my skepticism, in a way, a healthy amount, is the offensive line. Were they back? Are they better? Are they getting consistent? Are they becoming more consistent in their play? And through 3 games, even with a slight step back in the second game, I think we could have said, yeah, it looks good so far. This is a game that doesn't negate all of that work, but it certainly makes you kind of take a step back and question where we're at. While we are critiquing the offensive line, and we'll get to the stats here in just a second, let me bring this up. Can we give a shout out to Cale? I forget how you, Cale Ellis, I believe is how you pronounce that. I'll learn it once we get more opportunities to talk about him. When Connor Lew goes down in this game, that's probably the worst thing that could happen on this offensive line. Is your center, your guy that's got the eyes of all of college football in terms of being up for awards and things like that, probably at the end of the year. This kid, who is, as they continue to talk about, barely, not even 18, I believe, and goes in there, has won the opportunity to be the second guy behind Connor Lew, goes in there, and I thought handled himself pretty well for the few minutes they. So I do want to give that shout out. I think there always needs to be, when we talk about the bad, some of the good that happened with that. Let's see. This is WT saying O-line is obviously better than previous, but not where it needs to be for SEC play, at least through one game, right? At least through one game. Looking through a couple of your comments before we go here to see if there's anything that we need to bring up before we get going. Most of you said Cam Coleman is your player of the game. So thank you all for your input on that particular thing. And obviously some acknowledges for Cale Ellis and his shout outs as well for what he was able to do in coming in for an injured, Connor Lew. Thank you. I got there finally. It just took me a minute. You can see I'm just trying to work through a bunch of different things here. A little credit to Brent Venables from Robert. Venables is a defensive mad scientist. Our line did well most of the time. I don't disagree with that a little bit, but they certainly weren't horrendous the entire game. They had stuff thrown at them they hadn't seen before. So hopefully this makes them better, prepares them for the rest of SEC play. There you go. So that's certainly another way to look at the an unhappy part of the Auburn offense today. All right, let's look through some team stats, things like that, and walk away or try to walk through this game the best we can. Total yards on the day, 287, 303. Did anybody think that this was going to be this low of offensive yards for both teams? I mean, pretty even. Auburn obviously loses out on that one. 287 total, 220 passing yards. For all of the talk about Jackson Arnold can't pass over the middle. I mean, what a ridiculous notion that was. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying he was perfect tonight, but just because Auburn was taking what teams were giving them in the first 3 games doesn't mean you can't do that. He was able to do that tonight. Passing the ball 220, 270 for Oklahoma, so they got some overtime. Rushing game, I mean, look how both rushing attacks tonight were just not good, but Oklahoma only gets 32. So Auburn's prowess in stopping the run continues, but you also got to give credit to the defensive front and just the defensive effort of Oklahoma as well to stop the run in this game. This is, I really thought if Auburn could establish the run in this game, they were going to find themselves in the win column. And since they weren't able to do that, that makes me feel like I was on the right track there, feeling about where this thing was going to go. Let's see here. What else we got in the chat here? Looking through some of these things, make sure we haven't talked about any of these. Yeah, there's a lot of classlessness for Jackson Arnold in the Oklahoma people. Someone wrote a great tweet about it. I don't know who to credit it to. The dude went through 4 coordinator changes, if that's correct. Sat out, waited his time. Actually won the Alabama game for him, bounced back last year. And then this whole hatred towards Jackson Arnold just tells you how much he lives rent free in their heads. So I think he showed up pretty well in this particular game. Keep going through the team stats right now. Oh boy. So I'm pausing because I'm just looking at it and it's for both teams. So, I started off the show addressing the refs, the penalties, all that kind of stuff. Some warranted, some not. Auburn and Oklahoma fans should be united in this. This was an atrociously refereed game for both sides. I mean, there were calls that went against Oklahoma, should not have been called. There were calls that didn't go Auburn's way, either where they were called or not called. So it was a horrendously called game. This is one of those games where you do look at it and go, did the refs outcome or affect the outcome of this game? I think it was close enough. And yes, once again, for Oklahoma fans just hearing this segment and overreacting, that does not me saying you didn't deserve to win. That's not me saying that Auburn didn't shoot themselves in the foot or find ways to hurt themselves. They did. You won. But also, we can make a very strong case here that was affected. Here's the penalties. 13 for Auburn, 85 yards. Here's the funny part, though. Oklahoma has 9 for 99 yards. So they have way less penalties. Not way less. I shouldn't be operating in hyperbole. Less penalties, but more yardage. So they had some pretty big ones as well. A lot of pass interferences that were called. First downs are in Auburn's favor. They were able to move the ball and keep it moving forward. Not a great third down percentage for either team. Auburn much worse, 3 for 15 compared to 3 for 12. And then fourth downs, Auburn was 1 of 3. One of those was a really big moment there too. And then 1 for 1 on the day on fourth downs for Oklahoma. Total plays are pretty even. Average yards per play is pretty even. So is average yards per completion and rush. Did you get the picture here? This was an evenly matched game. So this is not me trying to play the moral victories card, but we're talking about things in context and not just emotions here. Auburn matched up very well on their turf with the Oklahoma Sooners, who are currently an 11th ranked team and will maybe be a top 10 by the end of this cycle of the polls and all that kind of stuff. Looking through some rest of the team stats. Man, I can't even look at it. Red zone. Auburn was 3 for 3. So if I'm correct, Auburn is still 100% on the year in red zone, or did that change last game? I can't remember that. 4 for 4 for Oklahoma, so very efficient in the red zone for both teams. Auburn controlled the time of possession significantly, 35 minutes, 34 seconds to 24-26. So let's talk about this. We can continue to focus on the refs. We can acknowledge that. We don't have to keep harping on that. Auburn did a lot of the things that it needed to do to win this game. Passed the ball well enough, controlled the time of the possession, even without having a great run game. Got a turnover as well. Probably should have had another one. But then you have some big things like penalties, like not able to protect your quarterback. That's a tough one. Let's see what else. See if anybody's saying anything that we haven't brought up yet in the chat. Clay says it was our first away game in the SEC. We need to take that into account. Absolutely, you do. It is certainly something that we need to discuss. Dirk Hong says, I question the O-line coach and the strength coaches failing to do their jobs. I think that's a bit of an overreaction based off of just this one poor performance. Certainly we can go back to the last few years, but those don't really factor into this year other than just pointing out that there's a trend right there. I think there is evidence to show that they have improved going up against this defense. They still expose some old wounds. Could have been a lot worse, but I acknowledge that they did not play well. I wouldn't go that far with it. So the streams this week are going to be rough, Sam says. It'll be fine. We know how to get rid of all the Oklahoma fans that are obnoxious. I'm not worried about them. They just show that they live rent free in our heads, or we live rent free in their heads, whatever it is. Let's see here. Let's see this. Cody says, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but the refs had us killed from that touchdown. They knew it was a touchdown, but I'm not sure what you mean by you're sorry that I feel that way. I've acknowledged that was definitely a game changer moment right there and some other things. But certainly we acknowledge the refs had a factor in this thing, but we can't continue to harp on that thing. We got to focus on what we can control in this particular game. What else we got here? Turnovers, only one on the day. That's for Oklahoma. The big one for Kieron Crawford, picking up the fumble by Mateer. We talked about time of possession and sacks. I think we've talked about it, but I haven't given you the number yet. Only 1 sack for Auburn. 10. Isn't that a program record for Oklahoma? Is that what they said? 10 for 44 yards. They get the safety. And honestly, like the commentator said, out of a bad situation that it was with all the penalties, all the false starts, just backing up, then allowing more sacks, it probably was the best of a bad situation that Auburn had found itself in to give up a safety and be able to try to get some type of an onside kick situation there, even with the safety. So ironically, it had a chance. We had a chance there at the end. That's the team stats, okay? We've already asked about the player of the game for Auburn. I know it doesn't feel great to give that. So if you just got here, you're certainly willing to give that. We're not taking refs as the player of the game, all that kind of, we're not taking tongue-in-cheek ones. We're asking for legitimate ones. But Cam Coleman is the one that people came away with in the majority for player of the game. We'll see if that matches up now that we're walking through that a little bit. Here's your stats for your passers today, because we have 2. We got 2. Eric Singleton nearly drops a dime, a little bit overthrown, but it's Cam Coleman, right? With that nice little swing out to him for a flea flicker. Well, it wouldn't be a flea flicker, but anyway, you get what I said. A wide receiver pass. Eric Singleton nearly got it to Cam Coleman in the end zone, and it was a pass interference. It just was missed by the referees. At Jackson Arnold on the day goes 21 of 32, 221 touchdown. His completion percentage is 66%, a passer rating of 133.7. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad whatsoever. This is from James, says Jackson Arnold was also waiting too long to throw the ball or run. I think it's very easy for us to say that when we're sitting on the sidelines or watching it on the TV, because we're not seeing the rest of the field. Maybe the play was still developing, things like that. I think out of the bunch of times he did seem to be sitting back there a long time, probably a few of those he did wait too long. I would actually agree with you on some of those occasions, but I don't think he was waiting too long the entire night to run or throw the ball. And that goes back to with our conversations about the offensive line. Not a great performance by them, but there was times that they gave him opportunities to operate, plenty of times. And maybe those were a few of those times where he held on too long or could have run a little bit. I think we could say the quarterback designed run was not going to work against Oklahoma tonight. Happened too many times, in my opinion. I think that should have been probably pulled from the play sheet after the first half. I didn't think that was going to work, and it didn't really happen the rest of the game. So you had 2 passers on the day. Eric Singleton nearly had a great start to his quarterback career with that particular one. All right. Looking at our rushing stats, we already talked about it. Not great, 67 overall. Basically, all of it comes from Jeremiah Cobb. Basically, all of it. 61 out of 6 carries for him with a long of 44 that nearly, if he hadn't got spun around there, he probably would have ran for the whole thing, averaging 10.2 per carry. Damari, 7 for 25. He was just not finding any room today, but he's coming back from injury, so you give him a little bit of grace. Malcolm scored on his one rush on that jet sweep. Jackson Arnold, 21 attempts for negative 11 yards. So to me, I look for where's the big story in the game. It's certainly the sacks, but also the inability for Jackson, whether he waited too long, whether the sacks prevented him from being able to, use his legs a little bit more than he is usually able to. Those are probably your two big things that you look at tonight that made the ultimate difference in this game outside of the refs. We get it. Yeah. And what else here? Okay. We want to talk about receiving. Let's look at receiving too, and then we'll look at a few more of your commentaries in the chat in more detail. Passing today, your leading receiver in terms of receptions was Eric Singleton. Your leading receiver in terms of the yards was Cam Coleman, and Eric, and the only touchdown comes from, excuse me, I'm wrong on that one. The only touchdown receiving, yes, goes to Cam Coleman because it was a run play for Malcolm Simmons. Your total stats for each of these guys: Eric Singleton, 9 catches for 60 yards along of 18. Malcolm Simmons had 4 catches for 30. Cam Coleman had 3 for 88, as we talked about with that touchdown. Damari Alston, 3 for 24, and then Horatio Fields, 2 for 18. So Auburn gets the ball to only 5 receivers. It's not like that's a significantly lower amount than they typically do, but it's less than they have in the previous games against opponents that weren't as good as this particular team right there. So Cam Coleman certainly has a very impressive stat line: 3 catches, 88 for a touchdown. So all in all, he does look like the guy that gets a really strong look at player of the game for Auburn. So I wouldn't disagree with that. We're certainly going to hit this, like Neil says. Defense was very good as well in this game, where there was a lot of speculation if they weren't going to be. I know it doesn't look like it with 24 points given up, but we'll talk about it. We're going to get there in just a second. Let's see here. This is from Caleb. He says, we ran the ball with our running backs 13 times. Dude. I always laugh when people write dude or bro or something like that. Got to play better. Play calling was awful. I disagree with the term that it was awful. If it was awful, we wouldn't have been able to move the ball when we were. I think there were times that it was subpar, but the entire game, no, it was not awful. The refs, obviously, we got it. The refs are bad. We've talked about it. This is from Joshua. I won't deny that we shot ourselves in the foot a few times, but those refs weren't even pretending to be helping out OU. It certainly felt like that at times. And then Unbeaten Lake says this: what I've learned is playing RPO against Venables is a massive weakness. Once again, I would not operate in the hyperbole world. I think massive weakness is a little bit much, but certainly he does seem to find a way to be somewhat efficient against the RPO, as in the last 2 times that we faced him, with Oklahoma being in the SEC. It has not worked out. This one was a little bit, well, actually last time it was pretty good to start off the game too. So here, let me just say this before I go to the defensive stats. What I don't want to lose sight of is Auburn had an opportunity to pack it up, kind of feel like, hey, everything's going against us, and they marched down the field and took the lead. After all that they had been through the missed calls, the bad calls, all of that, through the sacks, they marched down the field and took the lead in the last part of the game. So that is something to kind of, if you want to find something to hang your hat on, that is something that you can look at in terms of feeling much better about your team handling that with all the adversity and finding themselves in position to win a game. Didn't work out that way. All right, we do need to go through the defense because I agree with Neil. I hope you guys are still there. Unfortunately, we're having some connection issues. I hope you all can still hear me. Let me know in the chat if we're good. I think we are. I'm not really sure what transpired there, but we'll work through it. All right, defensive stats. Here is your leading tackler on the day, Xavier Atkins, linebacker with 7 total tackles. Rashawn Pleasant is the next guy up with 6. Defensive back. Looks like we are still kind of cutting in and out there, guys. So I am so sorry what's going on. I'm not really sure what's going on in that particular internet thing right now, but it sounds like we can hear you and you're good. So I'm just going to keep rolling through. Sorry for those of you on the audio side of things hearing this later, but we're working through it. Okay, so Rashawn Pleasant with 6 tackles. Robert Woodyard with 5. Bobby, because his name was Quinchuero Jamison Travis, but he goes by Bobby now. Jamison Travis with 4, and then there's a bunch with 3, 2, and 1. So your leading tackler on the day was Xavier Atkins, making it up for the Auburn Tigers in terms of getting some good tackling done today. Trying to look really quickly here for the best stat line. It's probably, I was going to say it would be Kieron Crawford, but I'm only finding him at 2 total tackles on the day. And I thought he was the one that picked up the fumble. Am I wrong in that one? Let's see here. Forced fumble. Not forced fumble, but picked up fumble. He should have that on his stat line. I'm just not seeing it in what I'm looking at right now. Quarterback hurries, 2 of them on the day for Keldrick Falk. He probably had a pretty decent day. He got a sack, tackle for loss. Only 2 of those. So I don't really see, outside of Xavier Atkins and Rayshawn Pleasant leading the way with the tackles today, anybody that just boldly sticks out. I probably go back to Kieron Crawford on there. But is there anybody on the defense that you would love to give a shout out tonight, or something that you'd like to point out? Please do, because we certainly want to give them some credit for what they were able to do tonight against what was supposed to be a very potent Oklahoma offense. And that's the question now at this point. Was it Oklahoma overhyped? Was Auburn playing up to its potential on defense? Probably the truth lies somewhere in the middle of that, if we're going to be completely honest. What else we got going here? This was a commentary, I think, about Brent Venables. His weakness, oddly enough, maybe pro-style offense. Well, you can't switch back and forth just for one coach, but certainly that may be the recipe. We'll have to go and see if that's the case. Robert from YouTube wants to give a shout out to the entire secondary playing well. Think about all of the commentary, all of the questioning about how poorly people thought they played as a whole throughout the first 3 games, and when they were supposed to be a strength, and they rose to the occasion here against some challenging guys like Burks and the tight end Kanak, I think is how you say that, which were some better SEC type of receivers that you were going to have to find a way to keep in check, and to some degree, they were able to do that, or at least keep them from going too much. Who is the player that got hurt hitting the Oklahoma quarterback? I'm not ringing that one off the top of my head, so if anybody in the chat would like to answer Neil's question, I cannot remember that one off the top of my head. Okay, so I think we've covered all of the individual stats. Also done all the team stats. We've looked at defense as well, and of course the offense. One thing that we haven't discussed is the special teams in detail. So let me go ahead and acknowledge this right here. I actually was looking away when Hudson tried to do whatever happened there. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I went back and looked at, or tried to look back at it, looked like it was a bad snap, but then he tried to improvise, and it was a bad decision, and ends up turning the ball over on 4th down, and they end up scoring because of an illegal play. But it didn't get called. So it didn't get called. That is what it is. So certainly that's a negative. I think there was a poor decision made. I think it was by Malcolm to field the ball basically in the end zone on a punt. Got us out to the 4, but I think we ended up scoring on that drive, so it didn't end up affecting us too much. You miss a field goal, but Alex makes his. Gibbs got to try the other one. So, it's overall probably not a great day for the special teams in all actuality, but we'll talk about it tomorrow night on the podcast when we do all of our grading and things like that. Robert believes it was Crawford who got hurt hitting the quarterback, so we'll see if that comes up. Let's see. It's a very weird name, so we're not going to bring it up. So no, we're not saying but the refs here. We've acknowledged that. That's I think this is an Oklahoma troll in the chat tonight. It's always easy to cherry pick things that you hear and not listen to the whole thing. So kind of shows a little bit of ignorance on your part there, sir. So maybe try just a little bit harder. Kenneth Loomis. Oklahoma overwhelmed Jackson Arnold with a school record 10 sacks, exposing Auburn's offensive line. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. I wouldn't call it exposing. I think if you had bought into some narratives that this offensive line was where it needed to be, holistically, you're probably a little bit more disappointed. I was very skeptical about this, to be honest with you, so it didn't really shock me as much that they were allowing some sacks. Now, the amount It certainly is. So you got to give a lot of credit to Oklahoma's defense and Brent Venables' defense for creating that type of pressure. And on the flip side as well, it also speaks a lot to Auburn having all of those issues, all of them, those that were in their control and not in their control, that they were able to stay in this game and nearly win it. Let's see what else we got here. You're suspicious that Jackson's safety covered the spread. I think people love to look for conspiracy theories, and usually they are really not there. Yes, Neil, I do agree that a good old hurry up, no huddle offense would have run that defense into the ground. But I'm just a little bit biased on that one. I'll be honest with you. Okay, let me get some final commentary from you guys in the chat, and we'll go from there and talk about anything else that we need to talk about on this particular show. But as a reminder, Auburn does lose 17-24 to the Oklahoma Sooners, and obviously one that they're going to have a lot to look at to figure out how they can not put themselves in a position to be affected by the refs, what they can clean up on their own that was just their own fault. But there are good things in here to take away into Texas A&M next week. Just the beginning of SEC play, folks. So you got to saddle up. All right, before we get back to some of your questions and comments here, let me do a couple of reminders for you about what we have here for you at E2C Network. Our next scheduled live stream is the Auburn Experience this Sunday night. If you want to join us, it's on YouTube. It's a great show. We do our live podcast recording. You can watch the sausage being made, as I like to say. We're going to discuss this game. We'll discuss many other Auburn topics that are out there as well. Sports, culture, family. We cover it all. It's the full Auburn Experience. Austin Scott and myself. We'll have plenty of content also throughout the week leading up into the Texas A&M game, whether it be live streams on Wednesday nights, post-game show for that as well. I hope you guys will get ready for another full week of Auburn sports, culture, and family content that we've got coming your way. Okay. Final topics, questions, comments. What do we got here? Yeah, buddy, that's a little bit of hyperbole, so we don't deal in stuff like that here. That's kind of silly. This is from Brent. This game had some Clemson 2017 vibes, except Auburn played much better than that game. I'm trying to put myself there, Brent, with you. And from what I vaguely remember, I would agree with this statement. It's kind of weird this year. There's been a lot of games that we compare. I know we naturally do that, right? But there has been some similarities for a lot of games, like the Baylor game. There was a lot of discussions. If you go to our post-game show, you'll notice that we talked a lot about some things that happened in that with like Tennessee 2013, Nick Marshall type of situation there. So maybe this is a fair comparison, Brent. I'll have to think on that one, but that's not a bad thing to bring up. What was running through my mind when the fumble touchdown was called back? I was celebrating, but I know when it was called back, but I kind of knew that was the Auburn way, that something was going to go against us. I hate thinking that way. I don't think we should really, lament about that too much, but it just felt like that was going to happen. And I said, there it is. We can't have nothing good like that to start off the game. But once again, it builds towards how, I know it doesn't feel genuine to say I was impressed by the team, given some of the things that happened of their own doing in this game, but I was happy to see how they responded given all that they had to work through and was working against them. Robert wants to meet them in the SEC championship game. If the results of this game are any indicator, these are two very good teams that match up very well. We'll see how the rest of the season goes for both teams, how they stack up with the rest of the SEC, see if that narrative is true. But through one game in a tough environment for Auburn, against a decent Auburn team for Oklahoma, this matched up very well. So it would be a fun thing to do again. Neil's excited for the next 3 games, and you should be. There's a lot to like in this season, whether it's, wins, losses, all that stuff. There's a lot to look forward to. It's from Micah. Says, got to give props to the Auburn kicker. He knew his limits and didn't want to hurt himself, so he gave Gibbs the chance, even though he missed it. Still, no matter what the team I go for, I don't want to see anyone hurt themselves. Yeah. So what Micah's referring to here, and if you didn't see the special for Alex McPherson, you should. They did a really good job with it. And finally, we got some information about what he officially has been going through. There's been speculation. I've been very careful and not really appreciated when people were sharing his business out there until he publicly shared it. But the special goes into his battle with ulcerative colitis, with then Crohn's disease as well, and just the whole up and down story. So he makes his field goal tonight. He knows his limits. He and the coach are being very honest with each other about that. And so that was, that was a good thing to see. Let's see here. We'll go ahead and put that person in timeout because they're acting like a nuisance. What else we got on here? Anything else that we need to cover from you guys? This is from WT. Arnold proved he was a good quarterback today. I feel very comfortable with him at quarterback. I'm not enthused with the O-line in SEC play. Fair, all fair. Those are all fair feelings to have at the end of this game. Let's see here. Didn't Cam show down on the first slow? Okay, yes, Joseph, I'll address this. So based off the replay that we saw, it looked like Cam did not completely run through his route. Happens all the time. I'm not excusing it, but you do wonder, had he stayed in full stride, if that happens there. And I think that's an important thing to bring up because people want to say every overthrow is on a quarterback. Not necessarily the case. I think it's important for you maybe to adjust to that, but also you're expecting the guy to be where the play says he's designed to be. So you just wonder, even if one of those opportunities, whether it's the Eric Singleton trick play pass to him, the one time in the end zone where Arnold, I think, did overthrow him, and that time where I would probably put it more on Cam, what might have happened in this game? This is WT. We're not a top SEC team right now. Hopefully we improve. I think we'll have, I think we will be in a lot of games. I think this should give you some encouragement for that. Joseph says O-line was gassed on the last play. Letting 3-man rush get past for a sack was brutal. Yeah. You hate to say that any good that the offensive line was negated by that last drive, but it was bad. It was really bad. They know that. The coaches know that. And maybe it was being a little bit aghast because they were dealing with a lot tonight, but not a good look. Not a good look. From Brent, still have a lot to play for. Even 2 losses will make the playoff most likely. I wouldn't worry about the playoffs right now. We'll just worry about the games in front of us, but your point stands that certainly still a lot to play for. Yeah, this is a common thing that's being brought up. I think I disagree with this a little bit. I think there's a little bit too much obsession about, not necessarily about anybody in particular, of him holding the ball too long. I think it's easy for people, especially on TV when you're not at the game, to assume he's holding on the ball too long if there's no one open and there's not a path for him to run. And times there were. What do you want him to do? Just sling it around and throw an interception? It's you gotta give a little bit of grace in that area. But I will grant you, there are, out of the many times that he had ample amount of time to throw the ball tonight, probably some of them he held on just a little bit too long. I will grant you that. I just don't think it is not as big as some people I've seen overreacting about it. Some questionable coaching, maybe. I think that's always our go-to in losses like that, but let's not over-question it right now. This is a great comment. I love this Unbeaten Lake. Can we just hire Herb Hand and then fire him so the curse will end, or get Calvin Ashley back and convince him to end this curse? I mean, it does feel like that's what it started, doesn't it? I'm not even taking the shot at Calvin Ashley. I'm just saying that does kind of correlate back to that. That does seem like what's going on there. Let's see here. We're going to get rid of people that are very sad in the chat. People don't understand what freedom of speech is. Freedom of speech doesn't mean that you have the freedom to say on every single place out there. It's a tough look for you. All right. Anything else before we get out of here? I don't usually blame refs, but we got hosed a few times. Yeah, we've covered this ad nauseum, so we're not going to go back through it. But I've acknowledged it. Maybe that's how we need to end our time tonight. I believe that you should not blame the refs for your loss. What you don't want to see is the refs altering the outcome of the game. given the close nature of this game and the amount that Auburn overcame, even what it shot, what it did to itself on its own doing, nobody else to blame but themselves. You have to wonder what happens if the illegal play is called back, if the touchdown stands, and if that pass interference is called there. And of course, if one changes, the whole butterfly effect. How does it change the others? But that was a big thing. What you can stand on is the commentators, most everybody that's watching that, they agree. This was a poorly officiated game, and it does leave some questions. Doesn't take away anything from Oklahoma. Doesn't take anything away from the times that Auburn did bad things to itself. But it does beg some questions. So let's close out our time. Auburn wins. No. Let me try that again. Got used to saying that for a little while. Closing out our time. Auburn loses to Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma for the very first time playing there, 17-24. A lot to improve on in the offensive line, but obviously there were some other things that could have been better. The refs certainly were a discussion point in the game, but plenty of things for us to work on and improve in this very early and young season. Auburn now stands at 3-1 on the 2025 football season. Thank you all for being here, participating, and being part of our little family within the Auburn family. And as we leave you, I want to remind you to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. War Eagle.